Tonight we go back to early 1987 to late 1988 and talk about the story of this young married couple, Alina and Yusef Whitfield. They had just started their life together, both in their mid-20s, living on a quiet piece of land outside a town called Abita Springs in Louisiana. They weren't like most farmers in the area, Caucasian settlers who had chosen the village for its peace, but the people respected them because Alina and Yusef were kind. Their little orchard of mango trees fed both their livelihood and the community. Children would wander by, and Yusef always handed them fruit with a smile. Alina was gentle, always barefoot in the soil, humming as she worked. But peace does not protect from cruelty. One hot afternoon, 4 young men who grew up restless and wild decided to raid the orchard. They wanted mangoes, but not by asking. They came sneering, with alcohol on their breath, carrying knives and arrogance. Yusef saw them first. He stepped forward, shielding Alina behind him. His voice was calm but firm. "Leave. You want fruit? Ask for it. Don't come with violence." But the boys only laughed. One spat on the ground, another pushed Yusef hard against the tree. The fight came quick and ugly. Yusef swung back, but 4 against 1 is no fight at all. They beat him with sticks and fists until he fell, bloody and broken in the dirt, lifeless. Alina screamed for them to stop. She ran to him, but the boys grabbed her arms. They laughed as she struggled, their eyes filled with something darker than hunger. They wanted more than fruit. In that moment, Alina made a choice. Instead of letting them take her, she pulled a small blade from Yusef's belt and drove it into her own chest. Her last cry echoed through the orchard. She fell across Yusef's body, choosing death over defilement. The boys panicked. They had blood on their hands. To hide their crime, they dug into the soil beneath the largest mango tree and buried the couple there, side by side, as if covering them with dirt could erase what they had done. But it didn't. Not long after, the hauntings began. At night, villagers passing by smelled ripe mangoes, sweet, heavy, sometimes rotten, though the trees were bare. Whispers carried in the wind, footsteps followed people home, and the boys suffered most of all.
The first, Daniel, was the cocky one. He mocked Yusef as they beat him. A few months later, he fell sick with a strange fever. No medicine helped. His body burned until he collapsed in bed, screaming about shadows pressing mangoes into his hands until he choked. He died, gasping for air. The second, Kola, was strong, a swimmer. He often bragged that nothing could kill him. One evening, he went bathing in the river. People saw him dive, but he never came back up. When they dragged him out, his skin was covered in scratches, as if unseen hands had pulled him under. The third, Simon, was the quietest during the killing, but he never spoke of it. Over time, madness claimed him. He wandered the streets barefoot, raving about a woman with hollow eyes following him everywhere. He scratched his own arms until they bled, screaming that he could smell mangoes rotten under his skin. He died muttering Alina's name. The last, Jerome, was the cruelest. He was the one who reached for Alina. Years later, villagers found him dead at the orchard. His nails were caked with dirt, his hands locked in claws, as though he had been digging desperately into the roots of the mango tree. His mouth was filled with soil. The town understood then. Alina and Yusef had not left. Their spirits haunted the orchard, tied forever to the tree under which they were buried. Lovers in life, bound in death. The Whitfields' home was a small stone cottage that sat at the edge of the orchard. It wasn't grand, but it was filled with love. The walls were painted white, though the sun had worn them pale, and the roof was patched with tin sheets that rattled gently whenever the wind blew. Alina had filled the windows with lace curtains she stitched herself, soft and delicate. She placed clay pots of flowers along the front steps, so the entrance always looked alive with color. Yusef built a wooden porch out front, where they would sit together in the evenings, watching the sunset stretch across their mango trees. Inside, the cottage smelled of earth, soap, and fresh fruit. There was a small kitchen where Alina baked sweet bread, and a narrow hallway that led to their single bedroom. On the wall hung a simple wooden cross, and beside it a framed photo from their wedding day. In that photo, their smiles told of a future they believed would last forever. Neighbors often said the Whitfield cottage glowed at night, not from lanterns, but from the warmth between Alina and Yusef. It was a place of laughter, of whispered dreams, of hope. But after their deaths, the cottage changed. People passing by swore the windows no longer reflected sunlight. Instead, they looked like hollow eyes. The lace curtains moved though the windows were shut, and if you dared to step close, you would hear faint sounds. A woman humming, a man's low voice, footsteps on the wooden porch. Most terrifying of all, villagers said the smell of mangoes clung thickest near the cottage door, as though Alina and Yusef still lived there, waiting, watching, trapped between love and rage. After the Whitfields were gone, the town fell into silence. Everyone knew something terrible had happened in the orchard that day, but no one spoke. Some had seen the four boys swagger into the mango grove that day, and others had noticed the Whitfields were never seen again. But fear kept them quiet. Fear of the boys' families, fear of trouble, fear of speaking the truth. And so, Alina and Yusef were left under the soil, their love buried in secret, their deaths unavenged. That silence became the village's curse.
Not long after, strange things began. At night, dogs refused to pass the orchard road. Lantern flames blew out with no wind. People walking home smelled mangoes so strong it made them gag, though no fruit was on the branches. And sometimes they saw them, the Whitfields. A pale woman drifting at the edge of the trees, her dress soaked in blood. A tall man with hollow eyes standing at the cottage porch. The hauntings grew worse. Crops spoiled overnight. Children woke screaming, saying a man and woman stood by their beds. Men heard weeping at their doors. Women said their laundry line snapped in the night as though unseen hands had ripped them down. The town was choking in fear. And deep inside, the villagers knew why. They had done nothing. They had turned their backs when kindness was murdered. Now the Whitfield spirits wanted them to feel that same helplessness, that same terror. So they sought out Maman Zélie, the old Voodoo priestess.
She was the only one who could walk between worlds, the only one who might beg the dead for mercy. They begged Maman Zélie, the old Voodoo priestess, to free them from the Whitfields' wrath. She agreed, but her voice was grim. What you ask is not simple. To calm spirits wronged in life is to bargain with forces older than this land. You all must stand and witness, for it is not only their blood that cries, it is your silence too. Some villagers carried offerings, rum, coins, even bread, hoping to soften the couple's rage. Others came simply to survive, their faces pale with guilt. When Zélie stood in the orchard that night, everyone knelt behind her, trembling. They knew this was not just about restless spirits. This was punishment, retribution for their silence.
On the night of the ritual, the entire village followed her to the orchard. The air was thick and wet, the sky moonless. She carried a staff carved with veves, a gourd of rum, and a black rooster tucked under her arm. Around the mango tree where the couple lay buried, she placed candles, bowls of cornmeal, and 3 clay pots filled with ash. The villagers knelt as she began to chant. Her voice rose and fell like waves, calling not to the Whitfields directly, but to the gatekeeper himself, Papa Legba. Papa Legba, master of the crossroads, opener of the gates, lend us your ears. A path must be made for the wandering ones, so they may find their rest. The wind stirred, though the night was still. The candles flickered violently. The smell of mangoes grew unbearable, ripe, rotting, cloying. Some villagers covered their mouths, gagging, while others swore they saw shadows moving between the trees, the shapes of a man and woman standing hand in hand. Maman Zélie drew veves in the dirt with cornmeal, the sign of Legba, the key, the gate. She slit the black rooster's throat, its blood soaking into the soil, feeding the roots of the cursed tree. Then she poured rum and whispered again, Legba, take them to the gates. Let their love walk beyond. And then he came, not in flesh, but in presence. The night deepened. The tree itself seemed to groan. A voice, rough yet smooth, filled the air. The villagers dropped their heads, trembling. They knew it was Papa Legba. The priestess pleaded, Great Legba, they were wronged. Open the gates for them. Let their souls find rest. But Legba's laughter rolled through the orchard, deep and mocking. They do not wish to leave. Their roots are in this soil. Their love, their blood, their rage, all buried here. No sacrifice you bring can change that. The villagers cried out, offering rum, coins, bread, anything to free themselves. But Legba refused every gift. The wrong is yours as much as theirs. You stood silent. You let kindness be murdered. You will live with them. They will never leave. But I will make you this mercy. Their wrath will soften. They will not destroy you. They will only remind you. And with that, the night fell still. The scent of mangoes lingered, but no longer so suffocating. The shadows faded back into the tree, the candles burned low, and the rooster's blood sank deep into the earth. From that day forward, the Whitfields did not stop haunting the town. They did not forgive. They did not pass on. But their rage was no longer violent. Instead, they became watchers. Their presence was marked only by the sweet, unsettling smell of mangoes in the air. The villagers understood. Papa Legba had spoken. The couple would never leave, never pass through the crossroads. They were bound forever to the orchard, guardians and punishers both. And so the legend grew. Even now, if you walk by the old orchard at night and the scent of mangoes surrounds you, do not speak, do not linger. Alina and Yusef Whitfield are still there, watching, waiting.